Psycho Proctologists and the Flaming Buttholes of Doom, Chapter 1. I was poking around in Kirk Cameron's ass when my intercom buzzed, 3 short buzzes in quick succession, my office's predetermined version of an SOS. Shit. Lousy timing for it. Fortunately, Mr. Cameron was too preoccupied with my speculum up his ass to have noticed. "How does this feel, Mr. Cameron?" I asked him using my best clinical tone, trying not to betray any hint of urgency. "Any pain?" He shook his head. Bent over my examining table, his eyes closed, he wore a placid grin, as if I were his masseur and not his proctologist. No, Doc. It's fine." I hadn't expected his answer to be any different from the last time, but I was still professionally bound to ask the question anyway. I jiggled the speculum a little bit. "How about now?" No, maybe a little deeper?" I sighed. I estimated I had at best a pair of minutes before the door to my examination room would burst open. Best to wrap this up quickly, so I extracted the speculum. Kirk grunted as it came out. "Everything looks just fine, Mr. Cameron," I told Kirk. "I don't see any warning signs at all." Bent over my examining table, resting on his elbows, Kirk looked over his shoulder at me. His expression was crestfallen. "Nothing, Doc? Are you sure you couldn't look a little deeper?" I shook my head. "Everything's right as rain." "Oh, I see." "If you'll excuse me, I have to see another patient. I believe you know where everything is." I left Kirk Cameron to wipe the lube off his ass. I exited my examination room and fortunately intercepted my best friend Pfister in the hallway about 2.5 seconds before he would have rushed right in on Kirk. I fixed Pfister with my best glare. "What is it this time?" I asked. I took him by the elbow and steered him down the hallway back in the direction of my waiting room. Pfister, Joseph H. Fitz, Jr. to be precise, but ever since we were kids I'd called him by his nickname, was fit to bursting with enthusiasm. "You've got to come with me," he said. You won't believe it. It's... I sighed. "Pfister, you know I'd love to, but I just don't have the time. I've got a full schedule of appointments this afternoon." Which was a huge fib. I'd cleared the entire afternoon for Kirk Cameron, as usual. "But..." Pfister took a deep breath, but at that moment was distracted by the sight of Kirk Cameron emerging from the examination room at the back end of the hall. Kirk was wearing his dark sunglasses, and his head was bowed. "Is that..." Before Pfister could finish his sentence, I shoved him into an unused examination room and closed the door. "Kirk Cameron?" Pfister finished. "I'm a physician," I said. "My client list is confidential." Pfister frowned at me. "I thought he stopped seeing you over a year ago." I said nothing. I merely looked over the top of my glasses at Pfister in an attempt to tell him to drop it, which of course was the wrong tack exactly with Pfister. I should have known better. I'd known him for 20 years after all. Pfister's boyish face broke out in a devilish grin. He chortled. He actually chortled. I'd never heard anybody chortle like Pfister. "You know you've totally sold out, haven't you? I mean, come on, Kirk Cameron. I'm ethically bound not to discuss my clients with you. You know you're totally his bitch, right? There's nothing wrong with his ass. There never has been. So now you're capable of making a diagnosis without ever having examined a patient?" Pfister was a board-certified proctologist like me, but even he wasn't that good. Pfister hooted. "You know he just comes here so you'll stick things up his ass, right? If he wasn't such an uptight fuckwad, he could stick things up his own ass. Have you told him that?" I scowled. The thought had actually crossed my mind. But Kirk Cameron was my best customer, especially ever since Richard Gere had joined PETA. "Did you write him a prescription? How about a nice giant-sized dildo twice daily until the inflammation of his ego subsides?" A dildo is not a medically sound. "Or maybe a leather fetish gangbang. I bet a dozen or so bear's cocks up his asshole would cure his case of rectal itch real fast." Pfister. "Or have you suggested fisting? He might even find Jesus for real if he tried just once." Pfister cackled with glee. "Now I know how you're financing this fancy office and your shiny new car. You know he just comes here to get his jollies every week. Is that," he sketched air quotes, "medically ethical? You know, if he could just bring himself to ride a dick like every other closet case, you'd never have to see him again. You could cure him, Mikey. Pfister put his hand on my shoulder and adopted a somber air, like a pedant schooling a wayward pupil.